Ladies and gentlemen, we are an advocacy group, and we advocate for the things that impact the Caribbean community. These executive orders that have been put in front of us by the current retired White House negatively impact any immigrant family, no matter the status, whether they be citizen, whether they be immigrants, whether they're worker visa, refugee, or asylum. Any of the states that we know exists for immigrant families. So it's a serious thing. And so here we're talking about things that impact law. The way we can fight, the way we can protect ourselves is understanding exactly how law works, what exactly is happening. So things were mentioned up here that only a lawyer can tell. So we're being blessed that today in Texas we have some of these righteous, charismatic, wonderful, hardworking lawyers who have been doing work in Georgia for the longest time. And I do believe every single lawyer on the panel is an immigrant. Am I correct? Okay, well, at least you're part of an immigrant family. Huh? Immigrant peace. Her extensive repertoire includes handling adjustment mistakes with green card, application, facilitating nationalization processes, navigating fraud waivers, advocating for clients in cancellation of renewal proceedings, representing clients in appeals, asylum cases, deportation, defense, and empowering individuals through VAWA cases, Violence Against Women Act. At Francois Law Firm LLC, we wholeheartedly believe in the power of compassionate and dedicated representation. Attorneys speak the truth, personalized approach ensures that each client receives the attention, respect, and advocacy they deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, the famous Skeeter Joe. Okay, so you see how time the team, right? So, Donald Trump threw out all of these executive orders. Last time I was trying to list them and I realized we don't have a census that there are so many. So here's what I'm going to ask each lawyer to first respond, going on the line, starting out with Attorney Christian. What is your perspective of the truckload of executive orders that the orange guy in the White House has put on all of us? And by the way, in case anybody doesn't know in terms of our Caribbean community, this week he rescinded the extension for Haitian TPS, temporary protected status. So in 6 months, they could be undocumented in the United States. That happened this week. Last week it was 600,000 Venezuelans. This is serious. Attorney.
Well, yeah, I address this often in my practice. We can all sit here and say these are unusual times. Questions becoming hard and fast. In terms of what this administration is attempting to do, I think what they're attempting to do is instill fear. I think that's the primary objective. And when you instill fear, you have chaos. When you have chaos, you don't have organization. It's the exact opposite of organization is chaos. So what he's doing is every day coming at us with new information, new executive orders, don't leave a crown, want to be king. But we still are governed by a body of law. We are still governed by the Constitution. And when I think about executive orders, the first one that comes to mind is the birthright citizenship attempt to violate birthright citizenship. And as I explained to so many clients, that's a nothing burger. I don't know if you can use that expression. But that's not going to happen because that's constitutional, founded in the Constitution based on the freedom of enslaved people. But if you're born here in the United States, if you're naturalized, you are a U.S. citizen. The only way that can go away is through the House, the Congress, the Senate. It's complicated, it's time-consuming. They've been only in office for 4 years, so it would take much longer for that to happen. So pass it on to others, but my thing is this: he's instilling fear, and you can't let that rule today. You can't let that rule.
Thank you. I agree with everything that you said about fear. Do not be afraid. Stand your ground. Become a U.S. citizen, sir. Had the question earlier. Become a U.S. citizen. Don't worry about the green card. You can do that. You're not a criminal. Have a lot of criminal convictions. But citizenship is the key. You can vote. And you heard from the representative, it's key. Voting at the local level. In many ways, I think some of the Democrats like me were a little bit switched from deal and let the Republicans take over at the local level. We have to change that. The other point that I would make is knowing undocumented people, do not let them self-deploy. Believe that's part of your strategy, as you said, fear chaos. If you're undocumented and you leave voluntarily, it's very hard for us to do anything to get you back.
Attorney Lane, what about those that are economically challenged, like $700 something to buy papers for immigration process? The cost? Yeah, for the people trying to work with it.
Yeah, the costs keep going up and up. There are certain organizations that are helping with private fees and ticket loans mostly, probably some grants. But there are waivers that you can get depending on your income. So don't feel that you can't afford it. Look into it. We give free consultations. Many people give free consultations these days. Tell you how much everything costs, give you some ideas on how to finance it.
I wanted to share my Know Your Rights points in response to what Jason had said. And a lot of individuals don't know their rights. And one of the lists, I made a list, you can refuse to answer questions about your immigrant status. A lot of people don't understand that. You don't have to answer. You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. You can refuse to consent to the search of your person, your home, or your car. Law enforcement, a lot of times, will ask you, can I search? When you hear the word, can I, that means you have a right that the person is seeking permission from you to take away. You don't have to give up that right. It does not mean that the legal authority does not have if they have probable cause, they can still search that vehicle. But it protects you for immigration attorneys such as myself and for other attorneys to fight that your rights were unlawfully taken. If you say yes to the search, then you have waived that right, and it makes it more difficult for us to assist you if the person violates your rights. You can speak to a lawyer before answering questions, so you can ask for an attorney, or you can contact an attorney who you have put in place so that if these circumstances happen to you, you are ready. You can contact your consulate at the U.S. if you are not a U.S. citizen. You can request a copy of your immigration papers. You can request to make a free call to family or to friends if you're taken into custody. You can you can create a safety plan. And the biggest one for me that I would like to share is do not sign anything. Do not sign anything. The reason why, if you sign something without consulting an attorney or an attorney having an opportunity to look at what you're signing, you could be waiving valuable legal rights, due process rights, that you cannot get back if you have waived them. So those would be my pointers for these executive orders that are going into place. But the biggest solution, because I'm a solution kind of person, we are clear as to what the problems are. In fact, I believe the numbers thrown out earlier on the previous panel was that 75 million of us knew that this was coming. It's the difference between the 75 million and the 79 or the 77 million that did not realize what was at stake. Sir, to answer your question about your permanent residency, my suggestion is as soon as you are eligible, which is 5 years after becoming a permanent resident, you should apply for your citizenship. You should not wait until it's time to renew the card, because the card is valid for 10 years. And if you're eligible for citizenship within 5 years, there's no need to wait until it's time to renew your permanent resident card before you go in for your citizenship. Assuming that you have no criminal history that would bar you from gaining your citizenship, then that would be my suggestion to you, is not to wait until 10 years, is to go ahead and apply for citizenship.
I just wanted to add that I think it's important for us to share information as opposed to misinformation. I have a lot of consultations when people come to me, especially in my community, where they are like, well, this person did this, and this is what they got, and this person's brother, sister, cousin told me this, and so that's what I put on my application. A lot of things that happen are things that we have exposed in our applications that are not right. A lot of things people don't understand that once you, from the time that you file, for most of my clients in Liberia, once you file for that first visa application, whatever you put on there is what you allow the government to see. That's your information. So you cannot let a phone come back and change that information or tell somebody else something else. So I think what's important for us that are here that have access to information, attorneys, and resources is to educate, not even the whole world, educate your family members, educate those in your household, educate your friends, your co-workers, because we are all in this community together, and it's very important that we share the right information to avoid pitfalls. I believe in prevention is better than cure. I'd rather avoid that mistake than to go back and try to fix something. So I think it's important for those of us that have access to go ahead and try to break down the fear, mongering, a whole lot that's out there. If somebody brings something to you and you're not aware of it, advise them to go talk to an attorney. Advise them to seek out someone who has that knowledge and knows exactly what they're doing, so that we prevent our folks from being in situations that may be too late to rectify in the end.
My name is Peter Joe. Last name is Francois. This is my beautiful daughter, Leah, and our director, Ron. What I would like to say with respect to the question, especially during this carnival season, for those of you who go to carnival, for those of you who are traveling for Easter, for any one of those situations, or people just going and taking a trip abroad. I would like to say, especially in this climate, if you're a U.S. citizen, I want you to leave on your U.S. citizen passport, and I want you to come back on your U.S. citizen passport. I believe oftentimes when you're here and you figure, oh, I can have 2 passports. I want to go to my home country, and when I get there, I just want them to say, welcome home. You know, you don't want to say, so how long are you going to be here? What is the address that you're going to be at? This is a problem. It's a problem for a couple of reasons, but most importantly, we don't want them to say when you come back in that you renounce the U.S. citizenship and take away, because they've been taking away passports. And I don't want them to take anyone's passport just because they didn't realize when they went home for carnival to have a good time and they came back that they were going to be in trouble. There is a law that does state you need to use the U.S. passport going and coming. Okay, so you really need to use that passport, you know, so because travel is going to be a big issue. And you're going to see how much travel is going to be a big issue in a little while. It's already starting. The other thing is, when you travel within the United States, if you know you're undocumented, I would suggest you do not fly or not even take a Greyhound bus. I don't know how you're gonna get there, but it's been a problem. People are, there was a Jamaican lady, she was going from Miami to Fort Lauderdale and just had to pull off the bus. Okay? So, you really have to be careful with travel. Whether or not it's travel within this, people are thinking, oh, they're really focusing on Chicago, or they're really focusing on New York, or they're the sanctuary cities and these sorts of things. And that's not the case. They're everywhere. Okay? And that's something people really need to be mindful of. I don't want to say walk with your documents. I know a lot of people don't want to walk with their original documents, which is very understandable. I can't tell you to walk with a copy, but you need to walk with something. Okay? Even if you have a case pending, you need to walk with copies of your documents. State that. Because, like I said to some people previously, although just having a case pending is not going to stop anyone from detaining you, if you're undocumented, it will make it easier when we have to get you out. Okay, because at least you would have some documentation. And that information with respect to documentation, and I'm sure the moderator is going to ask that question soon, about what documents that you need to have, because everyone needs someone to know where a pile of documents are for in case something happens. You need to have sort of a safe space within your home and have these documents just set aside in case maybe you went to pick the child up from school and they detained you, but no one knows any of your information. Maybe you already have a phone number, maybe you already have things pending, or maybe you don't have anything pending. Okay, well maybe you decide, oh, you don't want to stay here, you want to expedite removal. Well, maybe they know if you have your passport set aside in that safe space with the rest of your documents, that's something that someone else can access relatively easily. But oftentimes people hide so many things and no one's able to find anything. Or maybe you're detained, but maybe you have waivers and things available to you, but you need the document. It's hard to get any documents if you're detained. So you really need someone that is out there that can advocate on your behalf. Set a family member. Have a family member designated or a good friend designated that, you can get a key in. They can go in and say, call an attorney and say, look, this is the situation. Because oftentimes when you're detained, it's hard for anyone, number one, to even know that you are held. And it's hard for anyone to help you because getting the documents that are oftentimes needed, like your taxes and these other things, that may be needed for advocacy on your behalf is very, very difficult to obtain. All right, so my two things would be to be careful with travel, whether or not it's international or domestic, and make sure you have a safe space where someone knows where your documents are located.
Thank you very much. Like I said, thank you. So, there was one mention earlier, you mentioned earlier about what people need to travel if you're a citizen and if you're undocumented, right? But how does one travel if they're a green card holder?
If you're a green card holder, if you're a green card holder, you're supposed to walk with your green card. That's it. A lot of people don't want to walk with their green card. I can't tell you to make a copy of your green card, but you need to walk with something. Okay, now, because you're a green card holder, whether or not you're undocumented or you're a green card holder, your level of protections may be different. Okay? So it's often a good idea, if you know you have offenses, to try to remedy it. And when I say remedy, I mean fix. Okay? So in other words, maybe you have a case that's not too old, maybe you can get it reopened and the case vacated. Maybe you can have a case pending. I tell people all the time, if you know you were arrested, and if it's for something, I say simple, traffic ticket is not simple, but if you were arrested, say for a traffic ticket, or maybe you weren't arrested for a traffic ticket, but you received the traffic ticket, and oftentimes when you go before the judge, they'll say, how do you want to pay? You always want to pay for the entire entire thing. Because if you say you need time to pay for it, that's probation. You don't want probation of any kind. Pay for everything up front. Okay, but if, in fact, you have any other offense that you think is going to be problematic, number one, don't track it. Okay, because even if it's dismissed in this climate, you're going to be taken into secondary inspection. Someone mentioned the fact that they don't want you signing anything, you don't want you abandoning your green card or your naturalization. I'm going to let someone else speak.
I'd like to just make a comment on the green card issue. We've had several cases where people have get to be like my age and they want to semi-retire, but they haven't gotten their citizenship yet, and they're out of the country for more than 6 months at a time. And they've been given a lot of problems when they try to return. The argument being, well, you're renouncing your green card, taking it out. Be very careful. If you do plan to stay longer, there are some forms you can fill out that will give you up to 2 years to stay. But again, as it's been said many times, get your citizenship, then you never have to worry about that. And if you're not a citizen and your green card holder, don't get full Social Security if you retire out of the country too. So that's a financial reason to get your citizenship.
I also want to add to the point of when you're a lawful permanent resident and you do have a conviction or an arrest, not a conviction or arrest, and the case was dismissed, make sure you have those dismissal papers, have the certified court documents on you, especially if you're traveling. Because a lot of times when you come in through immigration, you land at Hartsfield, they'll spike your information and it'll come up on a computer screen and you put into secondary screening. And that's merely going into another room and you have to answer questions. If you have the certified court documents with you, it will expedite the process. You present them to the customs and the immigration officer, and they can see that it's nothing. So that's something as well. And I would say travel with those documents in your car, because if you have your green card, it's pulled over, you don't have to present your documents. It's probably best that you do, because I passed out paperwork stating know your rights. When you are approached by ICE, you do have the right to remain silent, even if you're undocumented, if you're documented. Those rights are afforded to everyone within the jurisdiction of the United States. So you do not have to answer questions. Will that make your life difficult in that moment? Perhaps. But you can always assert your right and ask to have an attorney present. Again, if ICE is showing up at your door, if they don't have a warrant, they do not have a right to come into your home. If they do have a warrant, ask them to slide the warrant underneath the door. You examine the warrant. Make sure your name is on that warrant and make sure it's signed by a judge. Otherwise, you can tell them to leave. If they insist on coming into your home and violating your rights, do not resist. Allow them into your home. Continue to remain silent. If you're allowed, take photographs, get badge numbers, and advocate after the fact. Now, if you are removed from your home and you are detained, there's an ICE locator for your family members, and there is a website. It's an online detainee locator system, and it's locator.ice.gov. And so if you have a family member that doesn't return home, and you know they're undocumented, and you're thinking, I don't know what happened to my family member. They could be at Stewart Detention Center in Montgomery County, Georgia. Go on, within 48 hours, the system is updated, and you go onto that system, you plug in your family member's name, and there you can see if your family member has been detained. And then you move from there. You should have an emergency plan. You should memorize telephone numbers. I know we don't memorize telephone numbers any longer, but your children should know your telephone number. School administrators, you give them your telephone number so that your kids can know where you're at. You should also designate someone who would have authorization to make medical and/or legal decisions for your children if you have minor children, if you are detained. So it's a matter of having a plan. Have money for an attorney, so you might want to save some money aside for an attorney. If you're able to present an immigration bond, you want to have money to do that. And I'll conclude, you can never conclude on this subject, but I'll end right now by stating establish a relationship with an immigration attorney now. That's probably the most proactive thing that you can do. Establish a relationship so that you have a phone number, the attorney can go into action for you.
Just a follow-up to the statements of both councils is a lot of permanent residents believe that if I'm a permanent resident and I'm traveling outside of the United States, I'm a permanent resident. Well, the law says every time you are coming back, you are asking the government for permission to allow you back into the country. That's why it's so critical that no matter how old your arrest was, whether you were a juvenile or it was 1970 or 1980, a lot of individuals say, oh, that was so long ago, I can't even remember. Well, you don't have to worry, they're going to fingerprint you, and they're going to remember. And they're going to use it to say that you're an arriving alien, and that they're not granting you admission as a permanent resident, and that you're going to have to go in removal proceedings. It's going to be more expensive to deal with it. So it's less expensive to sit down with an immigration attorney first, talk about your criminal history, make sure that there's nothing in your criminal history that will bar you from being admitted when you're asking for permission to come back. One of the other ultimate benefits that most permanent residents miss is when you become a citizen of the United States, if your minor child is also a permanent resident and they're under the age of 18, they will automatically derive U.S. citizenship from your naturalization. So I have been pushing everyone who is eligible that doesn't have criminal history, that the mindset of, oh, I don't want to lose ties to my country, I feel like I'm betraying my country if I don't become, if I don't remain a citizen of that country. That is a myth. You need to become a citizen so that your minor children who have friends that were brought here from such a young age that they don't realize you're not an American yet, don't get into trouble by being racially profiled by law enforcement. They're in the car with a friend, the car gets pulled over, the kid gets arrested, the kid is a permanent resident, he doesn't realize not only is he going to be arrested for criminal charges, but his immigrant status is now off the grass. You as a parent, by just naturalizing, can save your child years later. I had a case in my firm. The gentleman was 32 years old. His parents naturalized before his 18th birthday. He was clueless that he was a derivative citizen. He got placed in deportation proceedings, and the first thing he did was file appropriate documents with the court saying, you're unlawfully holding a U.S. citizen. And what happened is they were released immediately because the federal immigration judge cannot detain a U.S. citizen. So become a citizen so you can save your kids from foolish decisions that they will be making as children, so that when they become an adult, you can save them.
Patrice, do you want to say something?
Yes,
Keisha, and Stephen. Okay, go ahead.
I also want to, it actually goes to what you were talking about with respect to the visas. Oftentimes, when you fill out these applications abroad to come into the United States, sometimes you go to the embassy 2 or 3 times. Most of the time, you think, they didn't do anything to just shut the window in my face. After you stood in line for, since 2 o'clock in the morning, and they just shut the window in your face. But everything that you put on the application, that's one of the questions that they ask you now. Have you ever been denied a visa, or have you ever been denied entry to the United States? And many people don't remember. Some people, they go a few times, some people go once. Some people, they didn't realize their parent applied on their behalf, and they got them. So you have to be really, really careful, because oftentimes that's how they get you to the false statements. So you want to really make sure that you know of every single time, or you can remember every single time. And the new things they have on these applications now, which I think is really unfair, is, well, I should say they had it previously, which is, have you ever received public benefits? Okay? I had a client recently that didn't know she signed something for public benefits. it was back in the 80s. You know, she was at the hospital in New York, and they said, if you sign this, we can admit you to the hospital. But she thought she was signing hospital records, not realizing she's signing Medicaid. And now, that's one of the things they ask you. They never asked to, you know, for years, even if they asked it wasn't a big deal. But now, that's very, very important if you've ever received public benefits. And that goes for SNAP, or HANA, or anything. Okay, but it doesn't make a difference what it is. You really need to be careful of everything you try to remember as much as you can for anything you previously filed. Now, you can do a FOIA file, you know, and sometimes that's not a bad idea. However, it does take quite a long time to come through. But you absolutely want to know what you previously put on any documentation. Of course, you never want, you know, I tell my clients there are 3 or 4 things you never want to do. You never want to call yourself a U.S. citizen. You never want to vote, and you never want to be arrested. Now, if you got arrested, there's, you know, we could probably fix it pending, okay? Of course, if you owe child support, that's remediable. You just have to say that you're on a payment schedule. If you owe taxes, that's remediable. But the issue with voting, the issue of calling yourself a United States citizen, especially the citizenship part, that's usually a permanent bar to the United States. And the way it's stated is in writing or any other way. So say, for instance, you wanted to work under the table, but then you're like, you know what, I could use my cousin's Social Security because they don't work anyway, but your cousin's a U.S. citizen. Well, a claim can be made that you claim to be a United States citizen by using someone else's Social Security number who is a U.S. citizen. So you have to really be careful. You know, people used to do this back in the 80s, back in the 70s. But now everything with, you know, this, computers and all these different things, everything is catching up. And some people think that things they did years ago, and sometimes it doesn't matter depending on when an NTA was served or what happened, probably with respect to offense. But, you know, everything is now coming back. Every little thing that didn't matter, like traveling outside on the Jamaican passport because you want to stay for longer than 2 weeks and then coming back on the U.S. citizen passport, that never used to be a problem, but it's a problem now. So there's a lot of little things that was never a problem, but they are a problem now, and that's what you need to be mindful of.
Real conversation.
And I just wanted to add to that, something else you never want to do, you never want to misrepresent, hide and lie. You never want to lie on an application. You're a green card holder and you're looking to naturalize, so you're filling out your thing form here. Never lie. If you've been out in the country X amount of days, they know that. I mean, it's in the system. If you misrepresent, willfully misrepresent, now you can forget, you know, we get older, we forget. But if it can be proven that you willfully misrepresented in an effort to seek, gain an immigration benefit, you're done. And so that's something else you never want to do. You never want to misrepresent an application. Verbally, as well.
We're here in the conversation. Now, I do have a question. Earlier you mentioned that make sure you don't have any strikes against you in the law. What if you do have strikes? Will it be from misdemeanor through the various things that you could have been arrested for, whether it be from traffic to theft, assault, whatever? How does that impact you, say, if you're one of the non-citizen documented voters?
Okay, so if you're a permanent resident and you've been arrested for a criminal offense, there are certain criminal offenses that are deportable. That includes misdemeanors. A lot of individuals think, I just got a misdemeanor, how could it be an aggravated felony? Well, the difference between state law and federal immigration law is what determines whether a misdemeanor is actually an aggravated felony. So be careful with going into criminal court without consulting with an immigration attorney or having a criminal defense attorney who actually practices immigration law handling your criminal case. Because what's going to happen is what's a sweet deal for a U.S. citizen is not a sweet deal for a permanent resident. And all you're doing is trading one problem for another. You're trading your state arrest case for a federal immigration case. So if you walk in, the judges are now aware, and they will read the plea colloquy to you that says, if you are a permanent resident, they used to say, when I was in court, it may affect your immigrant status. They've changed that now. They're saying it's gonna cause you deportation. So the judges are aware, and they were getting these convictions overturned based on the Supreme Court ruling in a case called Padilla. Because in Padilla, the criminal defendant in that case was not advised that he would be facing deportation proceedings had he taken the plea. He took the plea, and then the plea caused him to be placed in deportation proceedings. The Supreme Court of the United States came back and said, wait, being separated from one's family for the rest of their natural born life, that's a serious enough issue and consequence that we think either the criminal defense attorney, the judge, or an immigration attorney should have advised the person of that issue or that potential consequence. So do not assume that because you have a misdemeanor charge, that will not become a deportable offense under federal immigration law, because federal immigration law has a list of offenses that are aggravated felonies or they're crimes involving moral turpitude. So be very, very careful. My suggestion is if you get arrested, you have an open criminal case, consult with an immigration attorney. If your criminal defense attorney said, I'm clueless, I don't know what's going on in that arena, here's the offer from the state, you're either gonna take this offer, or you can go consult with an immigration attorney as to whether or not this is a decent enough offer for you as a permanent resident to take. Once you clear that with your immigration attorney, then you can go back and handle this with a criminal case. But other than that, you're gonna be in serious consequences. One more thing I gotta say about crimes. A lot of individuals think probation is not a conviction. Probation is jail time served outside of jail.
Repeat that, please, and start that.
Probation, for the people in the back, is jail time served outside of jail. You are convicted if you are on probation. What the law is saying is, although we're convicting you and we're sentencing you to this time, whether 12 months or 2 years or 5 years, we're going to allow you to serve it on probation. You don't know how many times I've gotten a phone call where I say to the person, have you been convicted? They say, no, I'm just got probation. You're like, okay, probation is jail time outside of jail. You are convicted. So don't assume that because you're getting a probated sentence in your criminal proceedings, that's not a sentence. That's a sentence, it's a conviction, and the federal immigration rules are going to apply, and you could be facing deportation proceedings. These crimes can be fixed, as stated by counsel on my right. There's something we do at our firm called post-conviction relief. That means you'll come in and you'll say, hey, I got this conviction in Maryland, and I was the passenger in a car. The car was pulled over by law enforcement, and there were drugs found in the trunk. I got scared. I had crappy defense counsel. They took me in and they pled me, and I just took the plea because I did not want to go to jail. That's something that our office has been able to go back and do what's called post-conviction relief. We file either what's called habeas corpus. We file a motion to set aside the plea if it's early enough. We've done a lot of things, and sometimes those jurisdictions are very helpful in trying to get the conviction overturned. Some of the things that we're able to do is modify the sentence by having a conversation with the district attorney or the solicitor general for that jurisdiction. And we get a deal put together, and we draft a consent modification order, we send it to the judge signs it, and now we fix the underlying deportable offense, making it no longer deportable, and then the person can now proceed with the immigration portion. So be careful, misdemeanors can't be aggravated felonies. Be careful, probation is a sentence and it is a conviction.
With respect, I'm a law professor. I'm 20, 30 years old, so long ago. But I had a law professor that always used to say there's an exception to everything. And that's how I always go about it. I always believe there's an exception. There are a lot of waivers that you can receive. Now, of course, for most aggravated felonies, you cannot receive a waiver. But there's some circumstances, but it's sort of tricky. But people have to be mindful Whether or not it's an aggravated felony doesn't matter depending on the offense. It could happen within 5 years of you arriving in the United States. So if it's a CIMT, crime involving moral turpitude, which is usually an offense that happens within the first 5 years. So sometimes it may not necessarily be a deportable offense or an inadmissible offense or something to that effect, if you would go longer than 5 years. So with respect to offenses, you need to look at how long you've been here, how long ago it was, what's your status at the time, are you related to him? So there's a lot of different things that you really need to look at with respect to an offense. But I truly believe that if you get arrested, other than your defense attorney, you need to call an immigration attorney because defense attorneys get you in trouble. You know, because they're doing things that are quick and they figure, oh, it doesn't matter. And, you know, there was a time when they never told you that probation is jail time to be served outside. They do tell you that now, but there was a time that they did not tell you that. Now, not all probation is straight probation. You know, but it just depends on how it's written. So I've had defense lawyers call me and say, how do you want the disposition written? How do you want the offense written? Because you want it to definitely be written a certain way so it doesn't have any immigration consequences. But oftentimes, defense lawyers, unless they do, you know, immigration and criminal defense work, right. So unless they do both, it's very rare that they actually know, you know, how things should be written. So it's really important if you have that status to be very careful when you do. Okay?
I would like to add that as a rule of thumb, when I have a client come in, automatically I ask them, have you been arrested? Have you been in jail? Have you been before a judge? Anything that can trigger for them to let me know, yes, there is a problem. And if I get that sense, I automatically tell them, they need to pull your criminal background. Because a lot of them don't even know you don't even know what's in your criminal background. And I go a step further and say, you know what, we need to get an FBI check for every single state that you lived in, resided in, got pulled over, whatever it is, because I don't want any surprises when we send you these documents, and then we get something back from immigration, and then we all stop freaking out. So my rule of thumb is if you don't know what's on your history, and you know you've been arrested, cited, served time, probation, go ahead and find out what's on your record. And before you even go to the attorney, get that information for them, take it to the attorney, go to the courthouse, get your case disposition, get your case file, give it to the attorney. I mean, I like full disclosure of everything because a lot of clients will hide things and they think it's beneficial for them, but at the end, it very much makes everything work. So full disclosure, tell your attorney everything, know what's on your own record, and then we can help you much better once we know what's out there.
Go ahead, Frank.
I was going to make the point about the disclosure as well. And to get an FBI fingerprint report, it's only $1,500. It's well worth the investment because you don't want to be surprised. $50 or $100 in some locations.
But we're talking about if you have been arrested, if you've been arrested, what can happen. I don't know if anyone's aware of the Lake and Riley Act. This is going to come soon. Because under the Lake and Riley Act, you can be accused of a crime. You don't have to actually have been convicted. You don't even have to have been arrested. You can be accused of a crime. I guess you wouldn't be arrested if you're being detained and being questioned. But these matters, this is what mass deportation is looking like. It's not rounding up people in mobs, putting them on airplanes. It's measures like Lake and Riley. If you are an undocumented immigrant and you have been accused of burglary, shoplifting, assaulting a law enforcement officer, causing grave bodily injury and or death, within 48 hours you will be back in your home country. So it's not even a matter of if you had an arrest, where are the documents, you need a immigration attorney. This is what's happening, and there's one case, I think about 3 or 4 days ago, so Lake and Riley has been put to the test. An Indiana man, undocumented, caused a fatal car accident, and he's back home in Guatemala. So when we're talking about arrests and things of this nature, keep Lakin Riley, she was a young woman, I think it was just an anniversary of her murder a couple of days ago here in Georgia. So there's a bit of nexus. And even Democrats within the House agreed with the Republicans in terms of passing an act that was promptly signed by Trump. It is law. It's something that is new. I think it was signed on January 29th. It is very new. And the only caveat that I would say where again, it's fear mongering, don't get too alarmed. It would cost about $29 billion to implement the Lakin Riley Act. What do I mean by that? You need extra law enforcement officers. You need transportation. If you are deporting people, someone has to pay to fly people back home. You need places to detain individuals who you are arresting. So we're going to see how the Lakin Riley Act is going to play out, but that is something that is being used, I'm sure, in states like Georgia, I don't know the color, red states, blue states. You're definitely going to see people being deported by using the Lakin Riley Act. So this is mass deportation by other nations.
And by the way, that act came out of an action that occurred in this state, right? So we're now affecting the entire country, all inwards, all of something that occurred here. Did anybody else say anything, want to say anything on that?
The Lakin Riley Act is what frustrates me about that act is that at the time of the unfortunate demise of this young lady, she was not even a UGA student. And that frustrated me because we're using UGA and her passing to do something that probably we wanted to do in the first place, which is target immigrants. I am hopeful that attorneys such as ourselves and others throughout the state will not be afraid to challenge those laws. And the issue we have is that when a law is put in place, unless challenged to the point where it makes it all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, it sits on the books and it gets sometimes disparately enforced. If you're European, probably they won't go forward on you because they'll choose selectively not to pursue your deportation. Or if you're a white South African, which is one of the groups that President Trump has offered asylum to, not realizing that they own 80% of the wealth, so they rejected his offer, as most people would if they had money. But the Lakin Riley Act, I want us to not be afraid to push that envelope, to take it to the Court of Appeals, to take it to the Supreme Court, to petition writs to the Supreme Court of the United States to say, this is not right, and we've got to stop, and we've got to fix it. I want some of the naturalized citizens also, there's this myth out there that your U.S. citizenship can just be snatched up in a follow-up to their fear-mongering that's going on. And there's something under the law that still exists, which is due process of law. And in order for you to lose your United States naturalized citizenship, you must first go before a federal judge who is going to go through the process to determine, did you obtain your citizenship fraudulently? If you fraudulently got your citizenship, then yes, your naturalizations can be revoked. But that's with anything. If you fraudulently got your driver's license, I can revoke it. If you fraudulently got a birth certificate, I can revoke it. So the focus is not whether or not it can be revoked, but under what legal grounds. There's no legal grounds to just pick up a bunch of naturalization applications at USCIS and say, we're taking back this group we're taking back. But they can if they have the manpower, and I don't believe they do, because there's a difference between a possibility of something and the probability of something. It is possible, because there's a lot of things that Donald Trump is doing we thought were not possible. But Congress is asleep behind the wheel, I guess. And the probability is what we're hoping that prevents some of these catastrophic moves that are taking place. But my focus is naturalize anyway, because that's how we fix this nightmare. that we're gonna be facing for the next 4 years is naturally that will bombard USCIS with naturalization applications, because it's one of the only applications that they have a time restraint on and must process within a certain period of time. So if we as immigration attorneys, and let me tell you something, if you look me up, you know I'm not afraid of anything. I will file a lawsuit on behalf of a permanent resident and go to federal court and say, rule on it. They don't have to grant the citizenship, but they have to rule on it. And a lot of times when you get to that courthouse steps and the assistant U.S. attorney realizes, oh my God, I'm not gonna win this case, they back down. And they'll say, okay, we're not gonna do that, Judge. We're gonna send something on. And they'll move that application that has been sitting there for the 8 years, 9 years that your client's been waiting with a pending N-400. So don't be afraid. Sit down with the immigration lawyer. Vet the criminal history. It is what it is. It's happened already. It doesn't make any sense for you to sit at home cringing, hoping that what's out there that could have been fixed, that we could have used the time as attorneys to try to fix and to file this stuff, and to go to DC or to go to Maryland or call South Carolina or call North Carolina to fix whatever is in your criminal history so that we can get past and we can naturalize you. And then we can save all your little babies that are under the age of 18 by naturalizing you. So hopefully, the message that you will get of nothing else here today is file your naturalization applications, consult an immigration attorney to make sure you're safe, and if they won't rule on that naturalization application, sue. 120 days or 120 days.
You have 120 days from the date of your interview, so the decision is not made, you can actually sue the government and force them to make a decision. Like my colleague said, that doesn't mean it's going to be granted, but they have to make a decision.
I'm finding that beginning interviews within 4 to 6 months after we file, and people be in the same day that they have their interview. It's really fast. It's expensive, as Jason referred, but there are ways around that, as he said. I'd just like to hopefully not step on the toes of our elected officials here and put my political hat on again. But, you made references to 4 years and why is it doing it so fast? There are elections in 2 years. The majority in the House is razor thin, and he knows if he doesn't push it, there's a chance that he won't have total control of the House and Senate. So, vote.
We're looking at the bill number for because the comes out, the late Friday, so we're looking at to see where the status is.
Oh, he signed it.
It's law.
I understand we filed it too.
Oh, you went, oh, okay.
I wanted to let people know what the late arriving law is, which is basically fast tracking deportations for individuals with felony convictions. And under this law, individuals who are found to have committed crimes in the United States, including felonies, can be expedited for removal from the United States without usual lengthy appeals process. So the criminal convictions as deportation triggers, because that's what they're using. So for those individuals who were previously granted asylum or seeking asylum, a felony conviction could trigger immediate deportation, bypassing certain protections that might have been available to them in the past. And then you have detention during the asylum process, which are individuals with felony convictions may be held in detention during their asylum proceedings, making it hard for them to stay in the United States, even if they have a legitimate fear of returning to their home country. So I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. Does anyone have questions?
Well, you're preempted. First of all, can we give a round of applause to the all Avengers? Now, I'm glad you guys said because I was going to ask you about what we do to fight that. And for those who don't know, there is in the courts a lawsuit against birthright citizenship in Executive Florida. There is currently this week a lawsuit filed against the revocation of the Venezuelan extended TPS, and there are conversations about a lawsuit against the revocation of Haitian extended TPS. So there are ways to fight back as been described here. Now we're going to take questions from the audience and also take questions from online. The people watching on Jaywalk, put your question in the comments and we will see on, please carry a microphone. to arrest us.
So I've been following the Lazy Riley case and the act. And so is it true that if you're solely arrested, you can be deported, or does it have to trigger the conviction? And then the second part of my question would be, for those that are convicted of serious crimes, are they going to be deported, or do they have to serve their sentence here and then be deported?
The answer to that, it depends. And the reason I say that is because it's a case-by-case situation. I've seen cases where they require the person to finish the sentence before they're actually deported. And that mindset came around a few years, I would say maybe about 10, 15 years ago, when a lot of individuals who were getting deported were just coming right back. So in order to stop that constant reentry after deportation without permission or authorization, a lot of jurisdictions were saying, you know what, you're just gonna do this time. There are certain circumstances though where jurisdictions will say, that's expensive. He's got bigger fish to fry, let him go to the feds. I don't want him in my state custody. Go, bye-bye, save my taxpayers some money. Those jurisdictions you're gonna find will say, hey, guess what? ICE came and picked you up because they called ICE and said, could you come get him please? He's expensive to feed and he's sick. So that's why it depends, because the jurisdiction that says I can save all the money in the world for my constituents if I send him home, feds will come get him, he's gone. Some jurisdictions say, we have the money and we don't care. We're gonna waste taxpayer money. We're gonna have them served because we're concerned they're gonna come right back. Those jurisdictions are gonna have them served. I'll let you also talk about the writing arrest.
So your question was, does it only pertain to asylum? Was that your question? Or more question?
My question was, is it going to account just for the arrest? So if they're arrested for a serious felony, meaning they're only accused of it, would they be deported at that point? Or, as in the Laken robbery case, he was convicted and sentenced to life, but now we're going to deport him? It seems contradictory what they're trying to do.
Because this is new. Okay, so it really does depend. The way I understand the law to work is if you have had a conviction and say for instance something else transpired, because you have to be on their radar, they have to be able to pick you up. So it's not, because if you have been adjudicated guilty, they can't send you anywhere. So, I mean, they can, but you have to be adjudicated guilty first, and then under that act, that can happen. That's why when I spoke about it, I only spoke about it with respect to asylum, because it really hasn't been put into play yet. But it has been with respect to asylum.
So the intent too is to not grant you any bond. It's my understanding that the Laken robbery is to keep you for, it's a mandatory detention. So even though you're not convicted, you're not getting bond, you're gonna sit in that county lockup until you have been tried and convicted and then deported. That's the big problem that everybody has, because you are gonna be treated as if you're guilty as accused, not after you're proved beyond a reasonable doubt guilty. So issues that need to be raised is if you have a client that the court is saying based on Laken Riley, I'm not gonna grant a bond, you need to now challenge that. And one of the creative ways that I'm going to challenge that is filing habeas corpus, that the person is unconstitutionally being held, because the case of Ayala states that as long as I meet the Ayala factors, I'm not a threat to the community, I'm not a flight risk, all those things, that I should be granted a bond. So now you're going to have state law and federal law conflicting, which is going to give us as attorneys an opportunity to make some waves and change some laws.
But you already have a mandatory detention law, which is so stupid, because I think this doesn't really matter. Because they already have mandatory detention law, immigration. I'm like, why aren't they doing this? If there was already one on the books. It's a double law, it's the same law that we have.
And it is going to be challenged, it will probably go away, hopefully. But as my colleagues have stated, it's new. It is so new. It's not tried and tested. One case, He was probably not represented by counsel. He was deported from the Lincoln Riley for causing a fatality in a car accident. In terms of who Lincoln, the people who should be, the immigrants who should be afraid of Lincoln Riley, according to my research, it is not going to affect LPRs. So if you're a lawful permanent resident and Lincoln Riley cannot be used against you, if you entered on a visa and overstayed, Lincoln Riley will not affect you as well. If you were granted refugee status outside the United States, it's not going to affect you if you enter the United States. So if you're filing for asylum within the United States, you're going to have a problem. So if you get to the border and you make your claim, then you should be okay. Again, this is cursory research. It is so new. It was passed on January 29th, not even a month old. So we're giving you the best answers that we can give you based on our body of knowledge as lawyers and as immigration attorneys, but this is so new. But it's something to be concerned about, obviously. And in terms of if you're arrested and being deported, generally speaking, if you're arrested for a crime, you will serve your time here in the United States, and as soon as the next plane smoking, they will send you back home. But normally speaking, you will indeed spend your time here and then go back home.
Yes, I heard a lot of mention about permanent residents and TPS and naturalized citizen. And I know what it means to document. But for the life of me, I cannot understand what group of people fall under the umbrella of undocumented. Because I'm heard the mention of DACA and people like those. So what group of people fall under the category of undocumented?
Undocumented is just, undocumented is you're here in the United States after either coming in without documents, or you're here in the United States after using a visa to enter the United States, but you never established permanent residency at all. That's an undocumented person. So all those people you see at the border trying to come in, technically they're undocumented. And you know, you gotta be really careful with the law. Gosh, it just depends on where you fall. Because you could fall so many different places, you know. And I can't even say enter, because enter is a legal term. I don't know if you were admitted or not, because even now, they're letting you in the United States, but they're not admitting you to the United States. So you can't even file, say you get married to a U.S. citizen, it's not like you can file a green card because they're stamping it as if you're still outside, even though you're physically here. So it just depends on what category you fall in. You understand? Or not?
All right, we have time for one more question here, and then one more question online, and we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, I have two simple questions. Can you remove from the system for traffic violation, and can you remove for non violation?
Is your question, can you be deported for not filing your taxes?
Yes, I'm removed for traffic violation.
And can you be deported for a traffic violation?
Yes.
The deportation and removal, I'm using it interchangeably.
Yes.
It's the same thing. Okay, so if the traffic violation, is just a regular speeding ticket.
Under $500.
Under $500, that would be a no. If you're talking about a vehicular homicide, a DUI, those are things now you're getting into a serious category, although it involves an automobile and it's considered a traffic violation under state statute, you're now getting into deep waters as it pertains to your immigrant status. So be careful with DUIs, drink all you want, get somebody else to drive you. And be careful with the issue of crimes of violence that I'm in the car with my girlfriend and I'm just driving and the officer tries to be with speeding, but I'm beating her up. So I pick up domestic violence while pickup speeding, you might say, well, we have to violation, but they're gonna look at the DV charge that you picked up in the totality of the circumstances. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a yes and a no, and it will be a depends again. And that's why you always have to say, let me go sit down with somebody and take this case and say, hey, I just got arrested last week. The quicker you get to an attorney, the better, whether you can afford one or not, because a lot of attorneys are doing free consultations. That's why it's mind-boggling to a bunch of attorneys that would say, why would you not come sit down for free? If you can get your question answered for free, which can save you, a lifetime of hell, why would you not do that?
The tax.
Oh, the taxes, all right. So I've never seen in 23 years anybody reported for not paying their taxes.
Now, for filing a green card and a
That was missing taxes by ICE when he was coming through.
Okay, so you have a friend that already
Somebody
got
had a
reported?
relative that was entering, going and coming, and they remind him that they haven't seen 3 years taxes filed. So, they know that.
No, they can't see that. That's story on
Let's go to
That is there.
Yeah, no, they're not telling the truth. They're making up stories. The federal government is good, but they're not that good. And to be honest with you, they're not as smart as people think they are. So the federal tax, Elon Musk got more tax information for you right now than the Customs and Border Patrol immigration officer would have if you were coming in on a flight from any country.
If someone was removed from the United States, it has to fall under a law that they violated. So it usually have to be a pretty serious offense. So if someone was removed, it wasn't because of taxes. Failure to pay taxes if you're filing for your naturalization could, of course you can backfire, but failure to pay the taxes, all they're going to do is just deny the naturalization until you file. You understand? But failure to file taxes does not, unless he was committing like mass fraud and doing doing all kind of tax fraud, but serious, like using 3 social security numbers or something. But then he would have had to have been charged. You understand? So if it's for taxes, it would be something he had to have gotten charged for. Now I also need to say this is for informational purposes only. Because all of this has been about okay, this is for information. Because all of this is in a vacuum, because we don't know all of the facts for everything that we were asking. Okay? So that's something that you should be mindful of.
All right, I'm interested. 2 more questions, and then we're done. Sorry.
I have 2 questions. So,
One.
So, my mom has 2 passports, Trinidad and Tobago passport and American passport. Usually she uses the Trinidad and Tobago passport and takes to Trinidad. The passport is not stamped, so she's coming back to the US with her American passport for entrance in. So she's worried about that and what she should do coming in.
Let's hope. She should do it. But let's hope she has a really nice person that when she's coming in from TSA and tell her to smile. Because they can revoke the passport.
So you say they could revoke the passport, but then you say to revoke your citizenship, you have to appear in front of the judge, right?
Right.
So what's the balance?
Right now, I know they've been putting people in secondary inspection, and they've been putting like a stamp in it or something to that effect. So if you try to get another passport, it becomes a problem.
And you guys also said it takes 120 days to file naturalization paper. It should, I could be, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's like someone who's filing for citizenship paper. It takes 120 days, and that's.
I think you're mixing up the two things. Citizenship and naturalization are 2 different things.
So I'm asking about the citizen. Somebody using it.
So somebody
holding a green card, someone holding a green card and filing for this citizenship.
Naturalization.
Right. So how long does that paperwork takes? Is it 120 days? Someone said.
We'll learn about it. If
I'm understanding your question, that's my caveat. From the day you had your naturalization interview, we're sitting at USCIS here in North Lake, Atlanta, you sat there, you presented your paperwork, and the immigration officer said, well, I can't make a decision yet, we have to do some more background check based on something that you actually said at the interview. They have from the moment of the ending of that interview, 120 days to make a decision on your application. If they do not make a decision on your application, you can go forward and file a mandamus, which you're basically saying, do your job.
Okay, so I get it.
Not the late in the mail,
Not gonna take the mail, but
because that's the
But I can say that my experience.
If you're not gonna do that, then when we ask for no, can we get footage from him?
Oh.
If we need it?
Okay, so what do you think? Do you think we should take the application and don't do the interview?
Well, they're asking a lot of questions, and a lot of the questions that we have are answered.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Well, yeah.
So what we can do, we can be creative in asking those questions and take
So my question is,
Okay. We can do that.
You tell me
No.
what you think. Okay.
for as much of us to nationalize as possible, what are other specific actions that the Caribbean community can take to arm ourselves against what's happening?
So there are a lot of people who are eligible to get their green cards that don't file. So I would say, if you're in that position again, talk to an attorney. But if you or your spouse, your parents, your kids are in that position to at least get your green card, then go ahead and do so. Because again, it goes back to the fear. I think a lot of people don't think they can file at this point, or they may not be eligible, but you don't know unless you talk to someone who can really sit down with you, go through your story, your facts, and determine if you are at least take that step with your green card and then you can get your citizenship.
All right, next question.
Yeah, I just have a simple question. This is a relation, so I come in, an officer stopping you. Now, if you're a citizen and you have your passport with you, do you have to also have a citizenship certificate?
No.
Okay. Can you put those information, can you put your passport information on your phone? Or your green card? Is it acceptable, or I notice people use IDs, and you don't walk with the IDs, and you have it on your phone, can you show those things? I just want to get those information. You could. However, you want to be careful with electronics, because if you lose that electronic, or somebody else can access that electronic, then your identity could be up for grabs. I've had a case in the past where my client went in for naturalization through previous counsel, not me. And during the interview, he was advised that he was already deported. Well, what happened is he had allowed his identification to be compromised through prior relationships, and someone got deported in his name. And what we had to do is we had to come in and fight to show, based on fingerprints, because no one was paying attention to the fingerprints, that it was not him. So the only thing I'm concerned about by electronically walking around with a copy of my naturalization certificate on my phone is, one, interactions with law enforcement. Sometimes police officers will just say, give me your phone. You know what I'm saying? People don't know they have a right to say, no, I'm not gonna open my phone. Because it's so traumatic, you're so fearful, you're like, okay, let me show him this, and keep you going to jail. It's not. If he has it in head, he's taking you into custody, you are going into custody. So it's better for you to preserve your rights, remain calm, not have it electronically, because as a U.S. citizen, you don't have to have your proof of citizenship in your phone or anywhere on you. In fact, you don't have to have your U.S. passport. One of the most amazing things, I was driving to Arizona for an immigration case, and I was ignorant. I'm an immigrant. I was not born in this country. I was born in Jamaica. My parents came here in the 70s. I'm aging myself because I was 21 in the state. But I was traveling by vehicle to Arizona. And when we were going to Arizona for court, I noticed that when we got to certain states, you have to pull off the road and you have to go through these checkpoints, which I was oblivious to. Don't ask me why. It made sense when I was going through it, but I was just shocked. There's heat cameras, there's heat sensitive things to determine how many bodies are in the car because you're so close to the Mexican border that they're trying to make sure you haven't just buried 6 people and now you're trying to bring them in. And when I pulled into it looks like a truck bay, like where you would pull into a truck bay, and the officer comes up to the window, and I roll the window down, and he says, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" And I was kind of startled, because I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, okay, all right. Anybody else in the car with you?" And I'm like, Casper the Friendly Ghost, like, who else did you see? I was being kind of smart ass, but then I realized he was like, "Okay, here we go." I was like, I didn't have my passport. I never driven to Florida with my passport with me. So I was driving to Arizona and I realized that I was going to have this checkpoint that I had to go through, so I never brought my passport. So I kind of said, "So what would you do if I said I was not a citizen?" Then the inquiry goes further. So the caveat is claim citizenship because they never verified it, but if you falsely claim to be a citizen, then you're deportable from the United States. My experience was uncommon, but I didn't have to have my passport. I didn't have to take out my phone to show that I'm naturalized. I didn't have to take out any identification. I gave my driver's license and I said, "I'm a U.S. citizen," and we were off. It didn't take me more than a few minutes. But I would caution you to have in your electronic device such a critical piece of information. It would be better for you to travel with your green card. In fact, the law requires you as a permanent resident to travel with your permanent resident card, just like how you're required to have your driver's license on you. A lot of permanent residents don't know that. They take it, they throw it in the drawer, and they're like, "I don't want to lose it," but they don't realize you're violating federal law by sticking it in the nightstand and getting a car and driving home. But don't, that's just my personal take. Is not to put it electronically.
It's required by law that green card holders must travel with their green card as a legal. Last question, Avengers. During Trump's last administration, someone gave me a pocket-sized, this is from a teacher. During Trump's last administration, someone gave me a pocket-sized card with information and a script with the proper legal words for someone to say if they were ever detained or questioned by immigration. At the time, I copied it and laminated these cards for international students to carry with them at all times. I lost the document during the last years. Is there anyone on the panel who can tell me where I can find this information, these cards for my current students? They are afraid, their families are afraid, and many are staying out of school because of this fear. I would like to offer some kind of leverage to at least give them some sort of comfort as they venture out.
I think what they're talking about is this red card. And it's a red card, and it's similar to the Know Your Rights things that people are pushing out.
Somebody's holding it up in the audience.
There she is. She's got it. See that red card? That's the card.
Let me see, let me see, let me see.
American Civil Liberties Union, so you can go to their website, and the ACLU has these red cards that you can travel around with. Yeah, I do too. But the red cards are coming back now with Donald Trump, so what she's talking about is that red card.
I just want to get back to
where can she get more of these cards for students?
the ACLU.
The ACLU.
I want to get back to having your documents on your devices. Many times when people are coming here, of course, a lot of times they're coming to work or what have you, and if you allow ICE to go through your phone, they see all your messages as well. So it's not as though when you give them the phone, they're only authorized to look at the one screen or one picture that you want. So oftentimes what happens, and that's how a lot of people get removed from the United States. ICE ends up looking through your phone, and what ends up happening is they see, oh, I see you have an appointment to meet for a job, or I see you were texting someone about, even if it's just babysitting, what have you, but if you're texting someone about, do we live in or any sort of work, and they see that, they can remove you. Because remember, when you enter the United States for pleasure, because you're visiting, right? So you're a visitor for pleasure. you're not allowed to do anything other than what your visa says. So anything else is a violation of the visa. So and that's why they often ask, have you ever worked without valid documentation? Because that would be a violation of the original visa. So that means you lied and committed fraud on the way. That's why they hit you on these different aspects. So now they can say, oh, you lied on the visa application, and then you enter, you lied again, but you spoke to the immigration officer, and then you lied because you were misleading and committed fraud. So, so now it can sort of build. So, and that's all for giving them the phone. So that's not a good idea.
But everything she just said is absolutely true. But here's the rub. When you enter the United States on a visitor's visa, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you basically have no documentary rights at all. So when you come in through Hartsfield Jackson, they ask to see your phone, your iPad, your watch. You have to turn it over. But don't. But here's the thing. Well, we can't, as attorneys, we can't tell you to destroy everything. I mean, that's so like if the social media is a thing as well, someone will apply for a fiancé visa, a marriage visa, and then on social media, they're posing with someone who's not their fiancé, or their wife, or their husband. DHS, they look for your social media accounts. They do. So I can tell my client to delete their postings, because then I'm telling them to destroy evidence. But I can tell them to make their accounts private, right? And so that's something you want to do. So, but when you're at the border and you're standing on that line and they say, "Can I look at your phone?" You more or less have to turn your phone over, because then they can deny you anything. So you have a choice. You can be denied entry, or you hand over your phone. As an attorney, I'm telling you, make sure that what you have on your phone is not anti-American, not death to America. You don't want to have anything like that on your phone. The postings that you are liking on Instagram, you want to be careful about that. So, I mean, this is mass deportation. Again, it's not rounding everyone up when you come out of your place of work. They are using every means possible to deport people. Things that we never paid attention to in the past. Things that we never had to tell our clients in the past. I even tell my clients, when you have a pending VAWA application, and then sometimes you can do that when you self-petition on your own, you're doing domestic violence, marriage with an LPR citizen, LPR or US citizen, you might want to have your pending, that they have your seat notice in your car with you. It might not stop you from being detained, but it can slow it down. If you have a reasonable ICE officer, they will look at it and see that as an actual document and say, okay, move on to the next person. This is a waste of time, waste of resources. We're not going to detain them. So I tell my clients, laminate it. Put those pending receipt notices in your car. So if you're ever stopped and if you want to cooperate, this will slow it down. It will slow it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, this panel has been amazing. We've gone over time, but I want you to thank Attorney Christian, Attorney Lane, Attorney Dr. Rignon, Attorney KCC, and Attorney Speaker Joe Francis. Give them a round of applause.